Okay. What I was going to say before is that since we haven't heard anything from you the last month or so, yes, that's true, actually, you know that. How do you comment on all the latest developments after the Eurogroup's agreement and the Euro Working Group? Where are we right now? Thank you.
Okay, Lenny, that's a good first question. Yep. Let's take a few more.
Greece. I was going to say that it's more than obvious that the IMF and Greece's European partners are not on the same page in regards to debt relief, which is a crucial point for an agreement next week. Are you optimistic that you will find a common approach for the debt relief and the IMF will stay in the program? And also, will Madame Lagarde be at the Eurogroup on the 24th of May? Thank you.
Thank you. Katerina.
Good morning from me as well. Katerina Soko with Greek Daily, Καθημερινή and Sky TV. Did you have the chance to inform the board about the Eurogroup meeting on Greece? And do you expect the meeting of the Washington group on to tackle the Greek debt restructuring on the sidelines of the Japan meeting of the G7 on the finance minister, but also could it go even to the leaders? Thank you.
Good. Lenny, you've already had a question, so I'm going to go to Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy Todman with AFP. I have two questions. The first one would be, can you clarify the IMF position on the debt relief? Are you advocating for a solution in which the Greeks wouldn't have to repay the Europeans until 2040? And my second question, actually, in the IMF article of agreement, there's a provision that allows the fund to postpone repayments by a member state if such repayments would impose exceptional hardship to the country. Is it an option that you're considering in Greece, since that's the kind of efforts that you are expecting from the Europeans?
I'm looking, yes.
Two questions. One, has the IMF made any specific debt relief proposals to the euro area peers? And do you look at each debt instrument and propose what should be done for it to change the funding profile of Greece, or do you focus on the outcomes for Greece? And if I can just add one more to that, sorry. We've heard from European officials that the IMF is conducting its own DSA. If you can comment on anything about that, particularly if it's any different than the European DSA.
Lenny, you must be speaking for Michael today, are you?
Yeah, that's my last for the timing. So, are you working with the Europeans in order to present a common debt relief proposal in next Eurogroup?
Okay, let me take that bunch of questions, and if I've missed a detail on something, I'll come back and we can follow up, okay? So as Lenny mentioned, it's been a little while since we've had a briefing for various reasons, though the IMF has clearly been fairly public on many fronts. Anyway, you know, bit of context. The discussions continue between Greece, its European partners, and the IMF, and this is in the context of the first review of Greece's program with its European partners under the European Stability Mechanism. So most recently, many of you in the room know this, but I'm speaking to the broader audience. Most recently, there was a Eurogroup meeting on May 9, last week, and there was a communication out of that. The next meeting is scheduled for May 24, as was mentioned, so that's next week. So just to be clear, again, for those who perhaps don't follow it so closely, Greece is not currently under a program with the IMF, though we have been and continue to be fully engaged in the discussions, and of course many are interested, including in this room, in the IMF, and when a decision might be made on a further program, and that decision, of course, I need to emphasize, would be taken by our executive board. And I can tell you no proposal has been submitted to the board at this stage. So that's the broad context. Where do we stand? So the discussions are actively ongoing. So you'll understand that I won't be going into details and numbers or speculations, but let me try and help clarify the current situation from our perspective. So number one, on the recent discussions, we welcome the recent progress made by the Eurogroup and the Greek authorities toward agreeing on a package that could pave the way for the completion of that first review under the ESM program. The discussions, as I said, are ongoing regarding key elements of the package, including the policies supporting the fiscal targets and debt relief. You know, as we have said many times before, it is paramount that the program walks on two legs: strong policies that underpin realistic targets and comprehensive debt relief. Both are essential to ensure that Greece can embark on a path of sustainable public finances and growth, which is the shared goal, of course. On the debt relief issue, so again, the discussions are ongoing with our European partners. We very much welcome the start of these discussions on debt relief, which are a critical component of the overall package for Greece. As you know, the IMF has put this issue on the table. It was almost a year ago. So we see, again, we welcome that the discussions on this have now begun on this issue. And so we see that as a positive development. On the DSA issue, we have not yet finalized our debt sustainability analysis, the DSA. We have, I can tell you, we have exchanged preliminary views with our partners on general principles regarding debt relief objectives and modalities. As we have said in the past, we believe that it is possible to restore debt sustainability without upfront haircuts. Although this would involve providing very concessional loan terms, including long grace and maturity periods, and very low interest rates. Again, there are many options possible on how to get to a debt relief package, and those discussions have now begun, and we welcome that. On the reforms, which is the other leg, right, as opposed to the debt relief. Again, we have said that achieving a 3.5% primary surplus by 2018 is a very ambitious target. As we have previously indicated, we don't think it is realistic to sustain that level for many decades. Very few countries in history have achieved that. We believe that this would mean too much austerity, and as we have said again repeatedly, and the managing director said it a few days ago in London again, we don't want more austerity for Greece. And we certainly don't want more of the burden to fall on the poor and the most vulnerable. So we have stated our view clearly, and in our view, what would be needed to ensure that these ambitious ESM program fiscal targets are credible are fundamental reforms to pensions and income taxes that address the currently very generous level of pension benefits and the large exemptions from taxation that are exceptional by European standards. And both of these issues, of course, are related to the point about the burden falling on the most vulnerable. We've discussed these issues before, including at this podium. So that's kind of broadly where we are with the discussions ongoing. What about next steps? Well, we're looking ahead now to this Eurogroup meeting on May 24th that some of you have mentioned. What might be the focus of those discussions? We would expect the Eurogroup to discuss the legislation, the Greek legislation related to the prior actions in the ESM program, as well as debt relief. So again, both issues. I can tell you the IMF has been invited to those discussions. I expect that Paul Thompson will lead the IMF in those in that meeting. And again, we look forward to providing our views on both policies and proposals on debt relief. As we have stated before, for the IMF to participate in the program with financing, both credible policies and substantial debt relief will be needed. So maybe just, you know, a final word. The staff have indicated their readiness to present a program for the board's consideration. Once the program includes the necessary policies and the debt relief that can make the program add up, as we've said before, and it has to be realistic. We see both these elements as critical because, you know, going beyond Greece, you know, these ensure the uniformity of treatment among our member states, which is, you know, of paramount importance to us. We represent 189 countries. So this notion of having credible reforms and credible financing, in this case including debt relief, is not unique to Greece. Again, for those who don't follow it so closely, this is what the IMF does and what we do in our programs. Let me leave my sort of step back. I think I took on board a number of your questions, but if I missed something, we can follow up. Sean, you haven't spoken.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up and just ask about the discussions that are ongoing. Have there been any discussions with the European partners about European institutions such as the ESM buying out IMF debt or Greek debt to the IMF? And secondly, have there been any discussions with the European partners about the IMF not participating financially, but taking a purely monitoring or advisory role going forward in the Greek program?
I am not aware of discussions on either of those issues, Sean. So let's see what happens next week. What I can say on your first question is that broadly, you know, from a debt sustainability perspective, it would make sense to increase further the concessionality of official financing to Greece by exchanging more expensive debt for less expensive debt. I mean, just broadly speaking, that would make sense. But ultimately, and again, I'm not conveying here sense of discussions because I don't have that sense of specific discussions, but ultimately any decision along those lines would be up to the Eurozone member states and Greece to determine. So again, what I mean by that is decisions on replacing more expensive debt with less expensive debt.
Can I just follow up, just quickly? More broadly, you seem to be saying today that although the Greek authorities and the European authorities seem to have agreed on a reform program, that's the statement that came out of the May 9th Eurogroup meeting, that the IMF still doesn't think that that is a done deal on the reform side. Is that right?
We are still, assessing the reforms and expressing our view on the reforms. Michael, have you spoken already? Sorry.
Michael at Omega TV. As a follow-up to the two questions, Gerry, I hear you very well, but there is this sense in Europe that you've been difficult with the Europeans and the Greeks because you actually want to leave the Greek program. Do you want to comment on this?
You know, I would just re-emphasize what I said, Michael, which is we've been fully engaged, and we are fully supportive, as we have been now for some time. As I said, we stand ready to, the staff stand ready to take a program to the board, but it would need to meet those objectives and principles that I described to you. You know, I think the IMF is flexible, but we have a job to do, and the membership looks to us to do that job. So you know, we're objective, and we try to bring the hard-headed analysis to any program, any situation that we're involved in. Is it all on Greece? So let me take another package. Maybe I missed a few things. So let me, and then we're going to move off. We're going to move off Greece. Is that okay, Katerina?
So if I may please repeat my questions. I asked you if the board had been informed about what went on at the Eurogroup, and if you think that the debt will be discussed at the G7, okay. And okay. One follow-up on your answer on the ESM proposal. Could this swap of interest rates, or the IMF buying out the IMF, change your DSA for Greece significantly, and the financing considerations for you to actually participate? And in your own DSA, are you sticking to the primary surplus target of 1.5% of GDP for the decades to come? Thank you.
So the first one again was on, the first question was?
First question was whether you discussed it at the board level, yeah, and okay, what do you expect from
the rest? Okay, let me just go back on what I said and take these so I don't forget. You know, the board has been kept regularly informed of where we are. I mentioned that we had shared our preliminary analysis of views on debt, and of course that was shared with our board, for example. So, you know, our board, we keep the board informed. The board has, as I said, the ultimate decision, so that's very important to us. On the G7, I'm not aware of any scheduled discussion of Greece. As you know, Katerina, the G7 ministers are there. I'm sure that people meet and speak in the corridors and so on, but I'm not aware of any scheduled discussion at the G7 on the impact that you know, a replacement of some replacement of more expensive debt with less expensive debt. Of course, that would have an impact on the debt sustainability analysis, but you know, we don't have those numbers or that analysis right now. But potentially, yes, that would have an impact on the DSA. And, I've expressed where we are on the fiscal targets and the primary surplus, so I won't go beyond that. All right, Jeremy.
So you mentioned the need of a very long grace period for the Greek repayments to the EU. Is 2040, does 2040 looks like a reasonable date to you? And date, not that. Also, you said in the past that the IMF would wait for the first review of the European program to be concluded to decide whether or not you would participate in the program. So, should we expect in the event? I mean, if there's an agreement next week between the EU and Greece, should we expect a decision from the IMF about whether or not it will participate in the bailout?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what's going to come out of next week, so I can't, I can't give you an expectation on that. I mean, I've tried to describe where the discussions are. There's clearly still a number of issues that need to be discussed and decided. So I can't give you an outcome on that. What was the first question again on? Yeah, again, as I said, Jeremy, I don't, I'm not going to get into various numbers and so on. That's a part of the discussions, but I think I've broadly outlined where we stand. You're going to get the last question.
So
Thank
what
you,
is the
ma'am.
feedback that you're getting from the Europeans regarding your preliminary data analysis?
Yeah. I think I want to say we have a very good relationship with our European partners. We're in constant touch with them as we are with the Greek authorities. The discussions are very active. We're fully engaged. And I think we're all trying to achieve the same goal, which is to benefit Greece and the Greek people.